Okay, on top of 170, let's take a look at the One American Story because it talks about Minutemen, which is something that's pretty important throughout this section. So follow along as I read that. It says, on dawn on April 19th, 1775, some 70 militiamen gathered on the grassy common at the center of Lexington, Massachusetts, a small town near Boston. Captain John Parker, a veteran of the French and Indian War, was their commander. The militia was a force of armed civilians pledged to defend their community. About one-third of Lexington's militia were Minutemen, trained to be ready to act at a minute's notice, or a minute's warning. Everyone had heard the news. The British were coming. Each militiaman was equipped with a musket, a bayonet, and ammunition. Parker had spent months drilling his troops, but they had never faced British soldiers. Soon they would meet the British on Lexington Green in the first battle of the Revolutionary War. According to tradition, Parker told his men, "Stand your ground, don't fire unless fired upon, but if they mean to have war, let's begin it here." Okay, so militia was one of your terms that you had to look up, and that is basically armed civilians, ready to fight, pledging to defend their community and their country. And Minutemen are people that are trained to be ready at a minute's notice, Minutemen, hence the term. So let's talk about the Intolerable Acts and how they came about, new laws and such that the British are passing. So at the end of Section 2, we had the Boston Tea Party, okay? What happened at the Boston Tea Party? Garrett?
A bunch of disgruntled colonists decided to dump British tea into
the Boston Harbor, correct?
Yeah, to protest British goods.
Yep, and they were protesting what law? Dylan? Tea Act. They were upset about the tax placed on tea, so they go and dress up as Native Americans, jump on the ships, and destroy hundreds of containers of tea. Now, some of the colonial leaders said, hey, we'll pay for the tea, let's not make it a big deal, and then just go ahead and repeal the Tea Act. Well, Britain said no. They wanted to punish them, and we're going to punish you. So in 1774, they passed a new set of laws to punish the people of Boston for the Boston Tea Party, and to serve as a warning. Don't keep, rebelling. So they were called the Intolerable Acts. They were a very harsh set of laws. Now, the colonists called them the Intolerable Acts because they were intolerable. What were they called? What did the British call these set of laws? Drake?
The
coercive. Okay? So, 1774, Britain passes a set of laws to punish Massachusetts because of the Boston Tea Party. They're actually called the Coercive Acts. So if you have a question about these laws, you can either refer to them as the Coercive Acts, which is what the British would have called them, or the Intolerable Acts, which is what the colonists would have called them. Okay? So it was a series of laws to punish them, and certain things under these acts said they had certain laws they had to follow. So give me some things that had to be followed underneath the Intolerable Acts. Give me one thing, Garrett.
The port in Boston was closed until all the colonists paid for the destroyed tea.
Good. So they closed the port of Boston till all of the tea was paid for. How can this be such a harsh law to close the port in Boston, Drew?
Because that's where most of their outside goods came from, like food and
Good.
tea.
That's where everything came from. That's where they also sent things away when they were doing their trading. That was their port that was major for them. So to close the port of Boston was huge. What is something else? Dustin?
They banned committees of correspondence.
Good. What were those committees of correspondence again? Think about what the word correspondence means. What is it, Garrett?
They sent letters back and forth to communicate within the colonies.
Yep, so that they knew what was going on with each other. So they said, no more of this. Cannot do it. So they really made it a point to, and how do you think they could do this? Well, the letters were going on horseback, so the British soldiers did a good job of checking any man going through what they were carrying on them, so they knew if things were going through. You have a question?
No.
No? Who wants to do the next one? What's another one? Give me something else. Colby, you got one? If you guys follow along in the book, there we're on 170. It just kind of keeps going in order. There, Dylan.
They let the British soldiers house wherever they want.
Yep, they forced the the people of Boston, they must house the troops. They must house the British troops.
Now I have a question.
Yes.
Wasn't that already the Quartering Act?
Yes, but the colonists were not following it.
So
And
it was just a more severe.
Yes, they
version.
weren't following it, and the British weren't really doing anything about it. Now they were going to force them to follow the Quartering Act. So forced them to do this. Yes, that's true. The Quartering Act was in place. Zach?
With that being forced to house them in your homes, that is the perfect way to take away soldiers, because they're sort of sleeping. You know,
Well,
take them out.
yeah.
You're gonna try and win a war. You gotta do anything.
That's true. You could. You'd be punished severely. Garrett?
I had another thing.
Okay, last one.
All British officials that are accused of crimes in the colonies could stand trial in Britain.
Yes. So, if you're a British official living in the colonies and you did something wrong, instead of standing trial in the colonies, you get to go back over to Britain, to your home, to all your friends and family and such, and stand trial over there. A little bit more fair, they would say, for the British. Unfair to the colonists, yeah.
That was only in Massachusetts, correct?
These are all Massachusetts. Yep, this is Massachusetts. Because they were really punishing, and it served as a warning to the other colonies. Okay, so the other colonies didn't have to follow these. This was just for Massachusetts. They were so upset with the Boston Tea Party, Massachusetts had to follow these, and it said, hey, other colonies, see what's going on in Massachusetts? If you don't want this to happen to you, you better follow our laws and stop rebelling. Okay, now if you're a colonist, or even Massachusetts, or even a colonist, and you've got these new laws, how are you feeling now towards the British? How does this make you feel towards the British now that they've passed this? It's pretty much saying you can't do anything. There's nothing, your goods can't come in, your goods can't go out, you have to house the troops, all this stuff. Dylan?
Even worse.
Even more mad. Is it going to stop you from rebelling, do you think? Some people it might, but...
It would frighten me. I would stop right there.
Would you stop?
Yeah, I would.
Yeah, it's a little,
I mean, they just showed how much strength they have over you. You
Yep.
can stop that.
Yeah, so a lot of people, and when we get to at the end of the section about talking about independence, you're going to notice there were a smaller amount of people that wanted to be independent than there were that didn't. We'll talk about that later. Zach?
I honestly think that putting more of those laws is just going to make, the Sons of Liberty and all those other groups angrier, and that's going to make them do more things.
Okay.
Instead of trying to repress them.
All right.
Because using force to put down force is just going to make it worse.
Okay. Good. So we got a couple different opinions here. Now, the other colonies saw this happening. And they felt sorry for Massachusetts, so they offered their support. They sent them food. They sent them money to make sure that they could have the things they needed. Now, even though the committees of correspondence were banned, they were still able to get around it and send things out. They had their ways. So they sent out a little message. We're going to have a meeting, blah, 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 here and there, and it gets sent out. Okay? Now, to enforce the Intolerable Acts, who did they send over to do this? Who did they send over? Parliament sent somebody over to be in charge of making sure that these were passed, PJ? Or followed, I'm sorry. Person. Ethan?
General Thomas Gage, Governor of Massachusetts.
They sent over Thomas Gage, and he was going to be the governor of Massachusetts, and he was going to make sure that the Intolerable Acts were followed and enforced. Okay, so the committees of correspondence pass around information, letting people know what's going on, and they called for this meeting. We need to get together. We need to figure out what's going to happen because we're tired of this. We're tired of being treated this way. So they called for a meeting. They called all the colonies, please meet here. This is what we're going to have. What did they call this meeting? Very similar to what we call a group of people that meet today. Jordan? Yes, this is the first meeting of our Congress. We have Congress that's meeting. Right now they have a hard time figuring out what to do, and we might go into government shutdown. So this is the very first meeting of our Continental Congress. They said we're going to get together. Now they invited every colony And every colony showed up except for one colony. Which colony did not show up? Eli? Georgia did not show up for some reason. They were a little worried about, getting the British upset.
I mean, they might even succeed from the States. You never know.
They might. So they call it the First Continental Congress. They meet in 1774. Where do they meet? Where do they choose, Drake? Philadelphia. So this is where some people say first capital. So they meet in Philadelphia at the Pennsylvania State House is the name of the place. And Georgia, like I said before, voted not to send any delegates. So we have delegates from, which are, representatives of each colony coming together. And this is a huge step. It's a very important thing for America because it's the very first time that we had delegates from each colony or state meeting together and discussing government types of things. Okay, what? Except for one, right. Drew?
In 19 years, Philadelphia is struck with yellow fever.
Yes, that's right. You guys read that book, right? Fever?
It's actually
Huh?
it's a real thing.
Yeah, I know. Did you like the book?
No.
I believed you. I know about it.
During the World War
I thought it was okay.
I didn't like it, the book, to be honest with you,
I
but
thought it was too long. It kept like going.
yeah, it
I
didn't
read
do
the
anything
first
for
couple
me.
of pages, and I immediately put it down. Thank God I didn't have to read it in my literacy.
Yeah, it didn't do anything for me, but I mean, it's good historical. I'm glad you're reading it because it's good ties into this, but I didn't like it.
I hate it.
All right, getting back here, what did they decide to do? They weren't quite ready for independence because not everybody agreed. Because if they called for independence, that was tyranny. That was something that they could be killed for, hanged for. So they said, not quite yet. We're not ready to get there yet. But they did say we need to get our rights protected, and these are some things that we need to do. Bromley?
They said that they had a vote to ban all trade with Britain until the Intolerable Acts were replaced.
Yeah, so they're going to ban all trade with Britain. Remember when they boycotted and how they got what they wanted because the boycott really affected Britain? They are going to ban all trade with Britain until the Intolerable Acts are repealed. We'll see how that goes for them. All right. So what else did they decide this is what we're going to do? They need to do something because there's a lot of tension going on. Garrett?
They started training soldiers, and Georgia even agreed to train their soldiers.
Yes. So they began training troops, and Georgia, even though they didn't go to the meeting, said, yeah, we'll train our troops. It makes sense. We'll do this. Okay? What's that?
They don't want to be the odd man out.
Right. Well, not necessarily odd man out, but more like we need to protect ourselves too. In the first session of the Continental Congress, the delegates rejected the idea of creating a union, which would be the United States of America. They rejected it by a vote of just one vote missed it. Otherwise, they probably would have decided to go with independence there. But they decided not to. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to ban all trade with Britain. We're going to begin training troops because they know the inevitable is going to happen. Okay? At Continental Congress, some very important people. By the way, this is the Pennsylvania State House right here. And if you're going on the trip with us, we will go inside there where they met, where they wrote the Declaration of Independence, where they wrote the Constitution. We will go inside there. So that's a place where we are heading. Okay, so there's a guy by the name of Patrick Henry. And I think we are on page 172 still. Now, Patrick Henry was one of the delegates there, and you guys know where Patrick Henry was from? Does it say in there? I think it does.
No, but he was from the 13 colonies.
Good. He's from Virginia. And he delivered a famous speech, and he has a very, very famous quote that was given when he was given this speech to the Virginia House of Burgesses. This famous quote within his speech was, "Give me liberty or give me death." Can anybody explain to me what that means? Give me liberty or give me death. Does anyone know what that means? Bromley?
He's pretty much saying, give me the freedom that I deserve, or kill me now.
Right.